morning.
Good morning.
I really am happy to see all of you here this morning. What a treat. I have the best place in the house. So I'd like to start off this morning by guiding you in a simple little focus exercise. So I'd like you to take your index finger and your thumb, doesn't matter which hand you use, and just place the tips of them together. And notice what it feels like to have that pad of one finger touching the other, the skin to skin, flesh to flesh. To me, it's kind of a soft pressure. It's comfortable, kind of subtle, muted. And keep that in place while you take the index finger and your thumb from your other hand, and this time, use your thumbnail and press that against the skin of your index finger. And notice how that might feel a little different than the previous experience. It feels a little more edgy, we might say, a little more prominent, catches your attention a little bit easier. And so as you keep those in place, I'll just give you a moment to shift your awareness from one to the other. You might want to close your eyes so you can really focus in on the experience of that soft skin touch versus the nail against your skin, that edgy feeling. Go back and forth a few times at your own pace. And when you're really focused deeply on one, I think you might notice that the other one simply fades away, no matter how prominent it is. If you focus intently enough on either one, the opposite will seem to disappear. And now go ahead and relax your hands and shift your focus back to me. So as Skip said, our theme for the month of July is rejoicing in newness. And to me, newness implies change. And in fact, 2 weeks ago when Reverend Bonnie gave her talk, she talked about just that, the aspect of change in her life, how she tends to want things to be stable and consistent, but she recognizes that change can be important. And she's working with that and trying to see the pearl in change, especially when change might take place that she feels like wasn't in her control. Last week, Randy Granger brought in the element of freedom and that opportunity of choice we have to make change and to bring new things into our lives, whether it be something we want to do or a new way that we want to be. And in the reading that Skip just shared with us, Ernest Holmes was explaining that really there are two concepts involved with spirit. There's that changeless aspect of spirit, that aspect that is changeless because it encompasses everything already, and there's nothing for it to change into. And the flip side is that aspect of what he calls the body, what we might recognize as the physical world, all our experiences, all the tangible things that we see around us and participate with. Those things are constantly changing and evolving and unfolding. They can't help but do that. So how in the world do we participate and come to grips with this changeless aspect and the constantly changing? And I would suggest that we can recognize our role in both of those, because the core of our being, that is that expression of spirit, is changeless. Those concepts of love and creativity and joy, that are those things that are the fuel for our lives, and those are constant with us and changeless. But in the meantime, we have choices about what we want to bring forth in our lives, and then we get to participate in it, all those things that change, all those dramas and stories and things that are, again, in the physical world that we interact with. Around here, we talk about the concept, that principle of cause and effect. And we might say that what we experience in our life, everything that we do, everything that we have in our lives is the result of a thought. It's the effect. And so if we want something to change, something new in our lives, we have to step back and go back to the cause, go back to the thought that generated whatever it is that we're involved with, dealing with, and make a change on that level. The cause changes, the effect changes. And so we have that opportunity to change our thinking. You're familiar with that phrase. We might say you can change your perspective in order to bring about a different result, a different effect in your life. Joan Borisenko, who is a medical researcher and psychologist, was telling a story I heard told in an interview that she did a while back. And she talked about a young man who, shortly after the 2008 financial downturn, was so devastated that he took his own life. That was his perspective at the time. And despite the fact that he had a wife and a young child, his response, his way through of that situation was to end it all. Shortly after that, she heard a second story about a couple who, going through the same financial downturn, lost their business, subsequently lost their home, and ended up moving into a small apartment with their 3 young daughters. And so obviously their experience in life changed dramatically, but also their response was different. You know, they said, we're entrepreneurs. We built a business before. We'll do it again. And now that we have a big change in our schedule, we're home more, we have more time with our family, we're discovering things that are of great value that we didn't realize were available to us. So it was a similar experience, but a totally different perspective. And I'm just going to walk over here right now, turn this on. You know, giving a talk has its own stress. So I like to add a little additional stress by involving technology because it's so unpredictable. All right, so hopefully that will pop up here in a minute. A couple of weeks ago, Ron Zaharsky was here, and he gave a talk in which he mentioned an author who was describing her experience at home. She was out enjoying a sunset one evening, and out rushes her husband and tells her about some hostilities that have broken out somewhere in the world, and she was a little disturbed because she was trying to enjoy this tranquil, beautiful opportunity, enjoying the sunset, and he interrupts her with this unsettling news. And as she thought more about that, she realized, you know, both of those things exist simultaneously in the world, and but I do have a heart that's big enough to embrace all kinds of things simultaneously. And I would like to add to that, though, that we, in addition to that expansive quality that we also have the opportunity to choose where we place our focus. And do we want to have the majority of our focus in the areas where we can experience more oneness, like with a beautiful sunset, or do we want to spend time focusing and becoming totally embroiled in things that are distressing, that cause us to feel helpless and separated? So we have a choice, and certainly we all move from one perspective to the other at times. So I would suggest that we could use our time this morning to practice changing our perspective. And if this was a TED Talk, I'd have the little clicker, you know, and I could just change the slide. But I get to move around. So I'm going to suggest that we could have a diagram that looks like this. What if this was a diagram of life? And the H in the center can represent our home, the place we live. And the J up at the 1 o'clock position can be our job. Going around clockwise, the F can be family. FR can be friends. C could be church. S could be shopping or stores. R could be all kinds of recreation, and I stuck the W in there as the world, all those other things that we might get involved with that I didn't mention. So here's a diagram of what a life might look like with the H as the home base and the elements around it, those things that we go out to in the world, those things that we become involved in. Well, let's take a minute here and see, what do we think home really is? What if we said, for instance, that our home is a place to keep our stuff? Well, then I propose that maybe this could be your home. Or maybe this could be your home. Places we keep our stuff. Well, another aspect of home might be a place that we eat and nourish ourselves. Guess what's coming? Maybe this could be our home then. Or perhaps this place could be our home. And some might say, well, my home is a place where I rest and sleep. So then I propose that this could be your home. Other people might say that a home is a place where you can live in close proximity to people that are important to you. But I would note that, interestingly enough, these days, 25% or more people in America, and more in other countries, live alone. And many of them very happily by choice. So I would suggest then that having people to live with in your home, to make it a home, isn't a requirement either. So then I thought, are there any other important aspects of home? I asked my husband, Ron Zaharsky, what he thought, and he said, that stuff, that's not important. That's not what home is about. Home is a place where you can relax and be yourself. At which point I got kind of annoyed because I couldn't think of any other pictures to bring in to show, well, you could be really relaxed here, or you could really be yourself there. I couldn't come up with anything. So, okay, I will find a picture of someone relaxing and being themselves at home. And imagine my amazement when I realized the name of this character, Homer. He knows how to do home better than anyone else, and he certainly is relaxed and being himself. And I realized I shouldn't linger too long on this slide in case someone should walk in just now in the middle of things. Might not look too good. So let's go back to our diagram. So my point is that even with a concept such as home that we feel so strongly about, there are ways to shift our perspective about that. What does that really mean? Other ways of thinking about home, you might have heard the expression, home is where the heart is. And I ran across something that someone wrote that I really thought was right on. She said, the home is not the brick and mortar building where you live with your family. Your home is where you yearn to be. And I don't know about you, but for me that means just to be at oneness with spirit. That, I think, is what I yearn for. And so I recognize that as my true home. So let's make a little switch here. How about if we switch, just as an experiment, let's switch home and church. And so that would look like this. And just to broaden this concept a little bit, let's change church and make it be spiritual home. And let's change our home down at the bottom to PH, physical home, just to differentiate. Now, there are many ways to get to your spiritual home. You can get there by meditating. You can get there by taking a walk in nature. You can get to your spiritual home by reading an inspiring author, maybe Joel Goldsmith or someone else that you like. You can get to that spiritual home by becoming enraptured in listening to or playing music, perhaps. Or you could come to a place like this, the Center for Spiritual Living. And when I refer to this place as a spiritual home, I don't necessarily mean this building itself or this room. I mean what this place points you towards, what it brings you in touch with. As you come here, you'll hear more and more about that aspect of the core of your being, about that life energy that is expressing through you, about the place that you live, move, and have your being. Those are your aspects of your true home, and this physical place helps to direct you towards that setting. We might, instead of saying spiritual home, say your inner home, and the PH could be your outer home. Or as Eckhart Tolle might say, he refers to what we focus in on as the foreground and the background, and he thinks that the background is the spiritual setting and is the far more important one. You may also have heard the expression, your home is your sanctuary. And I'd like to ask you, have you heard that expression?
Yes.
And what do we call this room or this part of a church? A sanctuary. So this indeed could be your home, or at least the signpost to your home. Now, our physical home, we dash there from time to time. You forgot your phone, you run there to get it. You might dash home to get your books because you're on your way to class. Or maybe it's going to get cold and you would like a sweater. So you can dash there. And I suggest that we can also dash to our inner home or our spiritual home. Let's go there now. Let's run there right in this moment. So if you would, just get comfortable in your seats. Close your eyes if that works for you. And begin to breathe deeply. And as you inhale and exhale, pay attention to the expansion of your abdomen and your chest. Expanding and contracting. Pretty easy to notice that change, rising and falling. And this time as you breathe in, imagine that it's not just your abdomen and your chest that's expanding. Let's make it every cell in your body. From the tip of your nose to the tip of your toes, so to speak. All those cells, the muscles, the bones, the nerves, all the connective tissue, all those aspects of our body. And imagine that they're expanding and contracting. And now as you inhale, this time as your cells are expanding, imagine that they expand infinitely, to infinity. Every single cell in your body expanding with no limitation. And as you exhale, let any limitations or sense of boundaries just fall away. So you inhale expansively, farther than you can possibly imagine, and exhaling any limitation or sense of boundaries. And when you feel like you're truly there, you've truly reached that expansive point, you might say to yourself, I'm home. This is my true home. You might even say, there's no place like home. And now, I'd like to see if you can hold that sense of expansion as you open your eyes. You might want to keep your vision a little fuzzed out, so it helps you stay there. And continue that deep breathing. So this is the home that this particular setting can help you find. And certainly there are others like it in this community and other communities as well. And the added dimension that a setting like this offers is that there's a sense of oneness with the other people that are here with you. We can be cheerleaders for each other. We can provide support and receive support. And as someone mentioned in class the other night, how much she likes doing the meditation here in the group, because it seems so much more powerful and expansive than when she meditates at home alone. So what if this is, in essence, our spiritual home, our sanctuary? Again, not this building necessarily, but the place that it connects us to. Then that means that everything outside those doors is something else. When we go out, we're not going home. We're going out into the world. We're at home here, or in that place that we call that spiritual connection. As Shakespeare said, all the world is a stage. And Holmes was pointing out that part of existence as the body, that thing that's forever unfolding and changing. And we can participate in that. And we go out these doors, that's the body with a capital B that Holmes refers to, but we might think of it as our physical body, our emotional body is activated out there, our mental body, all the body of our affairs and everybody else's affairs, and it's all jumbled up and mixed up and happening all at once. And we get to witness all of that or participate in it at the level that we would like. It's kind of challenging then to maintain our peace, our focus, our connection to that spiritual inner home when we go out through those doors. I'd like to ask you to grab a prayer request card from the chair in front of you. I'd really like everybody to have one of these in their hands. Take a look at the topics on there: health, relationship, prosperity, employment, and the general category that includes any divine and high-minded qualities. I think a lot of people find that there's one category in particular that seems to crop up often in their lives. It's as they look back through the chapters of their lives, that theme tends to pop up fairly often. That's not true for everybody, but for many people. So, how do we stay in that setting of our inner home as we go out those doors? And we're going to run into these issues, these dramas. I'd like to tell you about a little exercise or a little trick that I use. And it's kind of a barometer. And I use a 10-point scale, and I add 2 components. Always need to add the 2 components together to get the 10. And here's how it works. If you had a concern, let's say, your bank account is empty and your car just broke down. So I might reflect and say, I feel some concern about this, but I'm not like totally in pieces. If this was way beyond what I could handle, I'd be at a 10. If it was a minor inconvenience, maybe I'd be at a 1. But let's say it's a major inconvenience. So I'm going to rate this as a 3. And because I have to have a total of 10, that means that there's a 7 remaining that represents my acceptance of what's going on, my okayness with the problem. This has happened before. I have some ideas about how to deal with this. It's not the end of the world. It's a problem, but I think I can get through it. So I would suggest that the 3 can represent your level of embroilment with that outside world, and the 7 is the barometer of your connection with your spiritual home. I'm okay with this. Universe always provides those kinds of things. And the balance may shift. You know, let's say my shoulder is hurting. If it was barely noticeable, I'd give it a 1. If it was beyond belief, I'd be in the hospital begging for some relief. If it was a 7 or 8, I'd probably be home today. I wouldn't feel like being here. This is a major ouch. But let's say it's a 4. I'm not going to carry anything heavy today. It's an annoyance, and if I move wrong, it really is a severe pain, but I'll put it at a 4. That means I have a 6 that suggests that the rest of me is feeling pretty good. I can be relaxed to a 6 because I know that I can rest and feel better, or this is something that I know how to deal with, or whatever it is that makes you feel comfortable to accept what's going on and know that it's come to pass. So I have this little barometer. I add the 2 numbers. And just as we focused before on our fingers, let's say my pain level of 4 is my fingernail poking into my index finger. And my at oneness and acceptance level over here is the 6. And just as we did before, we can shift our focus from one to the other. And as I do that, I notice if I stay with that 6, that light touch, that comfortable place, the other one falls away. And I think most people agree that what you focus on tends to increase, tends to expand. So a little gimmick to help you move through something that you might run into when you go through those doors today. So I would like everybody, in getting really firmly enmeshed, that word, in this change of perspective that I'm focusing. Let's say that when we leave here, you're going into the theater of the world, you're going to need a ticket. And your ticket is your prayer request. In order to get out that door, you're going to have to hand me your ticket. So here's how you fill it out. Grab a pencil, pen. Where it says requested by, put your first name. All you need is your first name. Where it says prayer for, put self. And then go ahead and circle one of those categories down below. Now you may feel like, all those things are already at a 10. I don't have a concern about those things. Health is good, relationships, great. Money's fine, I feel inspired, and so on. Well, perhaps, even though all of that's wonderful and great, maybe it could be greater. So you can still choose something. And your final alternative is, if you truly feel like you've got it made, then I congratulate you for being that self-actualized individual that you are. And I suggest then that you're probably just here this morning for the music and the lunch. So as your last choice, you can erase self, where it says prayer for, and put in someone else's name and circle something for them, something on behalf of another person. So this ticket, this prayer request, is your notice to the universe. This is the topic, this is the drama that's near and dear to your heart, that you'd like to see something new unfolding around. And so we will collect those as you leave. Some of us may be involved in actually changing our physical homes. But I would ask that all of us be at work settling into that spiritual home, that inner home. That's where we need to be resting more deeply. And then we can take that with us as we go out and explore the outside world. Let's do a prayer. So again, we settle into that inner space, that place of the changeless, infinite intelligence, that universal concept that we may call God, Great Spirit. And as we rest in that place, we recognize our oneness with that changeless entity. We are at one. And through that, we are also at one with all others. We have the opportunity to participate in change. We have the opportunity to create. And we have the opportunity to engage with others as we move through this creative process, so that we can come to new and improved versions of ourselves, perhaps new and improved work settings, relationships with family, new and improved versions of our communities, and within and between nations. As we all grow and unfold, evolving towards that oneness, and as Edie mentioned before, the world in loving partnership for the good of all. So I simply give thanks for the view from my spiritual easy chair. I give thanks for all the different homes that I can occupy. I give thanks for my physical family and my spiritual family, my visible and invisible family. And I give thanks for each one present here today on their quest for the connection with Spirit. And so I release these words, knowing that Spirit is already on the job, that unfoldment to all good is already taking place. And so it is.